Hello, a very warm welcome to Middle East Matters. I'm Sanam Shantier. Coming up on this week's programme, heart-wrenching choices for Yazidi women formerly abducted by Islamic State militants. Give up or keep their children born of rape. Illegal organ sales remain rampant in Egypt, mainly among refugees. This despite a legal clampdown on the trade. Also coming up, a conversation with Roxanne Varza, who runs Station F, the largest startup incubator in the world. We talked to her about the promise of the Iranian startup scene. All those stories coming up, but first to the plight of Yazidi women and girls. Among other atrocities, thousands of them were abducted by the Islamic State group and sold into sexual slavery. Today, with the majority of the extremist fighters pushed out of Iraq and Syria, their nightmare continues with an agonising question. Should they give up for adoption the children they bore from their captors, or keep them at the risk of being rejected by their own community?
They were held captive by IS militants for years, abducted and systematically raped. Thousands of Yazidi women have now returned home after their families paid a ransom. Many bore children from IS fighters and are now facing a dreadful choice. Bassam is one of them. She was reunited with her family after taking the heartbreaking decision of leaving her 9-month-old child in an orphanage.
I told my family about the baby and asked them if they would allow me to bring him with me. They said no, we can't allow a child of ISIS to live with us.
When IS militants overran the Yazidis' Iraqi heartland of Sinjar in 2014, they massacred thousands of men and kidnapped as many women and girls, forcing them into sex slavery. While some want nothing to do with their babies born of rape, others want to keep them, even if it means abandoning their families. The Yazidi community has always refused mixed marriages to preserve their fragile identity. Making matters worse, in this case, the fathers are the same Sunni Muslim radicals who sought to wipe them out. Like in many other conflict zones, women and children are now paying the high price of war.
I was hugging him until the moment they took him away from me. They took him away and said, "We have to take him. You can't take him with you." I told them, "I won't give him away. He's mine, and I don't want to go back anymore." But then I agreed after I talked to my family again. I changed my opinion and told myself that they had paid for me.
The Yazidi community was estimated to number about 700,000 people before 2014. Since the Islamic State group's onslaught, nearly 15% have fled the country, mainly to the west. Today, 3,000 of them remain missing or in captivity. Now the community is trying to heal its wounds.
The Yazidi religious authority realized that it was necessary to reintegrate the female survivors into society. First, he emphasized that the survivors were actually victims of what had happened to them. Second, that their families must support them and help them reintegrate society. And third, women should not be stigmatized if they were raped.
This year's Nobel Peace Prize winner Nadia Blétry, who was abducted by the Islamic State group herself, has helped shed light on the systematic use of sexual violence as a tool of war against Yazidi women and their people.
Julia Seeger reporting there. To Egypt, where authorities have been slow to tackle organ trafficking. A law was initially passed in 2011 to ban the practice, but loopholes remain, and poverty continues to drive some to sell their body parts in illicit transactions. Here's a report from our correspondents on the ground.
I came to Cairo to try and make a living, but I didn't find a job. Someone suggested selling a kidney for money. I asked how much. He told me $8,000. I said yes.
When Ahmed arrived in Cairo 3 years ago, he thought he could make ends meet by selling one of his kidneys for money. But for this young Sudanese refugee who did not want to show his face on camera, the operation turned into a nightmare.
I came out of the operating room and I was taken to an apartment. I still felt the effects of the anesthesia. I slept a little, and when I woke up, there was no one left, nothing. I just found 50 euros under the pillow. Now I'm sick and tired, and I still feel a lot of pain.
In Egypt, the sale of organs is illegal. Only donations are allowed. But by promising large sums of money or using threats and intimidation, organ traffickers easily force their victims to sign a donation authorization. In this kidney center in Mansoura, Professor Mohammed Ghunaim has made the fight against the illegal sale of organs his primary focus. He says the existing laws are easy to circumvent.
The poor man or woman who is ready to donate will go to a police station and make a statement, approved, stamped, that she is donating her kidney for the sake of God, for the sake of spiritual reason. So if you print this paper, this document, I'm donating my kidney for you for the sake of God, spirit, whatever, okay. On the surface, no financial elements are involved, but in fact, there is a financial element.
Finding a kidney in the classifieds or on social media in Egypt is shockingly simple. Middlemen openly leave their contact information and telephone numbers on Facebook. We contacted one of them.
الو فصيلة المطلوب ايه؟ فصيلة ايه موجب. تمام اللهم صل على النبي. هو التكلفة التوتال كله بيبقى من 180 ل 190 بس حضرتك هتتكلف بالعملية وكل حاجة صح؟ كل حاجة بالمتبرع بالأشخاص كله بس ده مش غالي شوية ولا ايه؟ بص انت هتعملها في مستشفى أول حاجة 5 نجوم على إيد أكبر الجراحين.
To confirm the offer was real, we sent a hidden camera into the hospital mentioned by the organ broker, a medical institution in central Cairo not known for organ transplants. Once inside, a hospital staffer immediately explained the process.
استنى ما يجي الدكتور جمال تقابله ويبعتك معمل بيجي الساعة 1 وبيبعتك معمل وانت بتشوف المعمل ده بياخدوا تحاليلك وعيناتك وهم عندهم بقى ناس عاوزة تتبرع بيوفقوك
عند المعمل. طب بتكلف كام مثلا لو رحت عند المعمل او كده؟
لا ما اعرفش والله
بس هي بفلوس صح؟
بس طبعا انت عندك المتبرع الواحد ممكن ياخد 50 40 غير بقية العملية 50 40.
In recent months, several high-profile trials of organ traffickers have made headlines in the Egyptian press. But with a law that's easy to circumvent, it's unlikely that authorities will be able to properly crack down on illegal organ transplants.
It's now time for the interview segment on Middle East Matters. This week we're joined in the studio by the director of Station F, the world's largest startup incubator based here in Paris, Roxanne Varza, who is an Iranian-American dual national, was previously a startup advisor at Microsoft France. Thank you so much for speaking to us.
Thank you for having me.
Now, since the opening of Station F in 2017, you've taken in over 3,000 entrepreneurs from across the world, and they come from the US, China, India, and of course, the Middle East.
Yes, actually, we've gotten a lot of international attention and interest, a lot more than what we expected. So today, the countries that are sending us the most entrepreneurs are the US and the UK, so probably something having to do with the current political climate there, followed by India, China, and then a lot of Middle Eastern countries. And today, the country that is leading the Middle East is Iran.
And so that's the next question for you. You're very closely connected to the industry in Iran. Tell us about that.
Yes, it's very interesting for us to see that actually how many Iranians are interested in coming and working at Station F. I think a lot of people from around the world are interested, but what we're starting to see, and perhaps as a result of sanctions, is that a lot of young entrepreneurs actually want to leave and build their businesses now outside of Iran, and I think that's part of where the interest is coming from.
And that's the big question here. How, in your opinion, are these US sanctions having an impact on the startup scene in Iran? Has it somehow impeded their progress?
So I think sanctions is not something new in Iran. We've been seeing it kind of for a while, and I've been following kind of the development of the Iranian ecosystem for a while. So I would see they actually had creative ways of getting around the different barriers, but this recent withdrawal from the agreement seems to have had a bigger blow locally. So I'm now seeing a lot of, there are people who are still kind of positive and they want to stay and they want to figure out solutions, but a lot of jobs have been kind of cut back on. A lot of people are just feeling a bit more hopeless than they were before, and so a lot of them are turning to international solutions.
Now, shifting the conversation slightly to the founder of Station F, the F stands for Fin, which is women in French. Talk us through how you try and support women in the region and whether you've witnessed any cultural differences when it comes to working out there and here in Europe, for example.
Yeah, so actually I don't have any specific engagement with women in Iran at the moment, but one thing that's always kind of been very fascinating for me is to see how many women actually go through engineering and STEM degrees in university. It's a lot more than what we see in Western countries. So, for example, in France, roughly 10 to 20% of people doing an engineering degree are women, whereas in the Middle East, especially in Iran, that's the figure that I currently have, it's around 60 to 70%. It's much, much higher. And so we can see actually there is something cultural at play with why people decide to study a certain topic. And unfortunately, this doesn't continue in the workplace. We see that women, after getting the degree in the Middle East, actually kind of drop out of the workforce. And so this is something that I wish could be more encouraged.
Something that needs to be addressed. Very briefly, tell us about the reactions that you tend to get from Iranians, because you and I have previously spoken about this, and it's not all positive.
Yeah, actually, it's I try to take it lightheartedly, but it's not always easy. There was an article that was published about me. I think it was mistranslated from being one of the most influential people to being one of the richest people. And so I got a lot of Iranians reaching out to me asking for funding, asking for financial support. And if people who know me know that that couldn't be farther from the truth, I don't have anywhere near an incredible amount of wealth. And so people would actually get quite aggressive with me, especially Iranian people, when I said, I can't help you with funding whatever it is that you're looking for. So I really kind of want to set the record straight. I'm happy to help in a lot of other ways.
Roxanne Varza, I'm afraid that's all we have time for. Thank you so much for speaking to us.
Thank you.
And that's it for this week. Don't forget you can reach out to us on both Facebook and Twitter. That's Middle East Matters France 24. Thank you for watching.